Welcome to the Reed Flute. Find a comfortable position, take a slow, deep breath, and let the day gently fall away as we begin. The first lamp of the caravanserai had just been lit, and the desert outside had turned the color of deep water. Camels folded their legs in the courtyard with long, tired sighs. A pot of lentils breathed softly near the kitchen door. Somewhere beyond the outer wall, a reed flute gave one low note, then another, as if the reed remembered the riverbank from which it had been cut. A traveler sat near the lamp with dust on his hem and a hard feeling in his chest. It had followed him all day. A harsh word spoken at the morning well. A face turned away. A small wound that the mind kept touching until it felt large enough to fill the sky. The old dervish beside him did not ask for the story. He only poured warm water into a clay cup and began to speak of Hassan of Basra. In Basra, when the alleys were narrow and the river air carried the smell of rope, fish, and wet earth, Hassan sat one evening with a few students. His room was plain: a reed mat, a shelf of worn books, a lamp with a wavering flame. Men came and went through that door with questions about prayer, trade, hunger, grief, and quarrels of the household. Hassan listened to each as if the world had only one voice at a time. Near sunset, a young man entered with anger on his face. He had hurried through the market, and the dust of the street still clung to his sandals. He bowed, but not fully. Then he said that another man in Basra had spent the afternoon speaking against Hassan. The man had accused him of pride, of secret vanity, of teaching softness while enjoying praise. The young messenger expected the room to change. He expected Hassan's eyes to narrow. He expected the students to rise like sparks. Hassan lowered his gaze to the lamp. The flame leaned and straightened. Outside, a donkey brayed once. Then the alley became quiet again. Hassan did not defend his name. He did not ask who had been present. He did not gather witnesses from the air. After a while, he called to a servant and asked whether there were dates in the house. There were a few, dark and sweet, kept in a small bowl for a guest. Hassan placed them in a clean cloth. He tied the cloth with a strip of palm fiber and gave it to the young man. He asked that the bundle be taken to the one who had spoken. The students were troubled. One of them said that bitter speech deserved correction, not a gift. Hassan touched the knot of the bundle with his fingers and said, in a voice barely louder than the lamp, that the man had given him something precious. If the words were true, then they were a mirror. If the words were false, then patience had been placed into Hassan's hands. In either case, sweetness was the only proper return. The messenger left with the dates. His anger did not know where to stand. It had entered the room ready to be fed and had found no dish waiting. In the lane, the bundle swung from his hand. Its small weight seemed stranger than a sword. Later, the man who had spoken harshly received the dates. The story says he held the cloth for a long time before opening it. No sermon came with it. No accusation. Only the fruit, wrinkled and brown, filled with the slow sugar of sun and palm. Perhaps he ate one. Perhaps he wept. The old books are quiet about that. They only say that Hassan slept that night without adding another coal to the fire. In the caravanserai, the traveler watched the lamp. The hard feeling in his chest had not vanished. It was still there, but it had lost its command. It sat like a stone cooling in water. Let the bitter word rest beside you tonight until it loses its teeth. The lamp answered with a small blue tremble, and the night made room for a needle and a lion. The second watch of the night settled over the caravanserai. The moon had climbed above the broken edge of the outer wall, and the shadows of the camels lay long and blue across the courtyard stones. A boy from the kitchen moved quietly with a tray of cups. The old dervish warmed his palms over the lamp, then spoke of a city where men were proud of the marks they carried on their skin. In Kazvin, so Rumi tells, there lived a man who wished to be known as brave. He had broad shoulders, a black beard, and a voice that traveled ahead of him in the bazaar. When he walked among the sellers of cloth and copper, he lifted his chin as though expecting room to be made. Yet there was an emptiness under his boasting. He felt it at night when the bazaar shutters closed and no one was listening. He wanted some sign that would silence the trembling place within him. One morning, he went to a tattooer. The shop was small and smoky, with jars of dark pigment on a shelf and a brass basin catching the light near the doorway. Needles lay wrapped in clean cloth. On the wall were drawings of animals, flowers, swords, birds, and curling vines. The man stood before them and chose the lion. He wanted the lion large. He wanted it across his shoulder, fierce enough that bathhouse attendants would whisper, and other men would look twice before speaking sharply. The tattooer nodded. He had seen such hunger before. He dipped the needle and told the man to sit. The first touch came. The brave man shouted. His hand flew to the place where the needle had entered. The tattooer paused. The man asked what part of the lion had been started. "The tail," said the tattooer. The man breathed hard and wiped sweat from his upper lip. A lion, he decided, could be a lion without a tail. Many creatures lost tails in battle. Let the tail be omitted. The tattooer said nothing. He dipped the needle again and bent to the work. At the second touch, the man cried out louder. A passerby stopped outside the door. A pigeon rose from the roof. The man demanded to know what part was now being drawn. "The belly," said the tattooer. "The belly was not needed either," said the man. "A lion could be imagined without showing its belly. Let that part go as well." The tattooer looked at him, then returned once more. His hand was steady. The needle shone. The shop smelled of smoke, ink, and the man's fear. At the third touch, the man nearly leapt from the mat. "What now?" he demanded. "The mane," said the tattooer. "No mane," the man said. "Let the lion be clean-necked. Let it be simple." Then the tattooer laid down the needle. He folded the cloth over it with care and sat back on his heels. His face held neither anger nor laughter, only a tired kindness. He said that no one had ever seen a lion without tail, belly, or mane. If every place the needle touched was refused, no lion could appear. The proud man stood in the little shop, his shoulder bare, his courage still only a wish. Outside, the market went on. A coppersmith struck a bowl with a wooden mallet. A woman weighed lentils. A child chased a hoop through dust. No one knew that inside the tattooer's room a man had met the thin needle of truth and found that his anger was only fear wearing a louder cloak. The old dervish in the caravanserai let the silence lengthen after this. He did not say that pain should be sought. He did not praise the needle. He only looked at the traveler's clenched hand and then at the lamp. Some marks are not drawn on the skin. Some are made when a heart allows one honest feeling to be felt without cutting away every part that stings. May the small needle of this night do only the work you are ready to receive. Past the sleeping camels, a coin rang softly in a tale from the market. By the time the night deepened, a little laughter was needed. The traveler's shoulders had lowered, but the heat inside him still moved now and then, like a coal beneath ash. The old dervish noticed without staring. He lifted a dry fig from a wooden plate, turned it between his fingers, and spoke of Nasreddin Haja, who often carried wisdom in a patched sleeve and a crooked smile. In a town where the streets wound around the market like threads around a spindle, Nasreddin once came upon a poor man standing outside a cookshop. The hour was cold. Steam rose from pots within the shop and pressed itself against the shutters. Lamb simmered with onion. Chickpeas rolled in broth. Bread browned on the inner wall of the oven. The poor man had no coin for a bowl. He held a piece of dry bread in both hands and stood close enough for the steam to touch it. He lifted the bread toward the scent. He let the warmth soften it. Then he ate slowly, with the care of one making a meal out of almost nothing. The cook watched from the doorway. His apron was stained with saffron and fat. He saw the poor man dip the bread into the fragrance again, and a frown gathered on his face. When the bread was gone, the cook stepped into the street and seized the man by the sleeve. Payment was demanded. People turned. A water seller stopped with his goatskin bag on his shoulder. A child with sesame on his lips stood still. The poor man stammered that no soup had touched his bowl, no meat had passed his teeth. He had taken only the smell. The cook insisted that the smell belonged to the shop, and that even a smell had a price when hunger enjoyed it. The crowd thickened, as crowds do when anger promises a small performance. Some shook their heads at the cook. Some laughed at the poor man. Some merely waited for the next shout. Nasreddin arrived on his donkey at the edge of the gathering. He was wearing a turban slightly too large for the weather and a robe whose elbows had known many seasons. He asked what trouble had taken hold of the street. Both men began speaking at once. Nasreddin listened, tugging at his beard, until the matter became clear. The cook wanted payment for the smell of soup. Nasreddin nodded as gravely as a judge in a painted court. He reached into his purse and drew out a few coins. The cook's eyes brightened. The poor man's face fell. Nasreddin held the coins close to the cook's ear and shook them. The coins clicked together, silver against silver, bright and small in the cold air. Then Nasreddin put them back into his purse. The cook opened his mouth in outrage. The crowd leaned in. Nasreddin said that the matter had been balanced. The poor man had eaten the smell of soup, and the cook had received the sound of money. No more remained to settle. For a moment, the street was so quiet that steam could be seen rising behind the cook's shoulder. Then laughter moved through the people, not sharp laughter, not cruel laughter, but the kind that loosens a knot before it becomes a rope. The cook's anger stood exposed in its own foolish coat. His grip on the poor man's sleeve weakened. The poor man stepped back, clutching his empty hands to his chest as though they had been returned to him. Nasreddin climbed onto his donkey. The animal flicked one ear, unimpressed by justice. The Haja moved down the street, leaving behind the smell of soup, the sound of coins, and a cook who had been paid in exactly the substance he had sold. In the caravanserai, the traveler almost smiled. Not all anger needs a sword. Some anger needs to hear its own little coins rattling in a purse. Let the insult beside you become only a faint sound in the bowl. The old dervish warmed his hands over the lamp, and the night moved from laughter to mud. The wind shifted after the market tale. It moved sand lightly against the caravanserai door, then passed on. The traveler heard the reed flute again, farther away now, its breath thin and human. The old dervish adjusted the wick of the lamp. Gold light rose along the grooves of his fingers. He began to speak of Bishr al-Hafi, Bishr the Barefoot, whose name had not always been spoken with reverence. In the days before his turning, Bishr walked the alleys of Baghdad with silk on his shoulders and wine in his blood. His house was known for music. Lamps burned late behind carved screens. Servants carried trays. Laughter spilled into the street and faded near the drains. Men praised his generosity and whispered about his carelessness in the same breath. One night, after a feast, Bishr left his house unsteady. The air smelled of rain and ashes. Mud had gathered in the hollows between the stones. From somewhere down the lane came the soft thud of a night watchman's staff. Bishr walked without sandals, or perhaps with them loose in his hand. The old tellers differ. What mattered was not his feet, but his eyes. Near a gutter, he saw a scrap of paper lying in the mud. At first it was only a pale shape. He might have passed it, as many feet had already passed it. But the lamp above a doorway flickered, and a line of ink shone. On the paper was written one of the beautiful names of God. Bishr stopped. The music from his house seemed suddenly far away. The wine in him became a weight. He looked at the scrap, darkened by mud, marked by careless soles. Shame rose in him so quickly that he could hardly breathe. It would have been easy to turn away. It would have been easy to say that the street was dirty, that the paper was already ruined, that morning would bring a sweeper. But Bisher bent down. He lifted the paper from the mud with both hands. He carried it home. The servants, still awake among the cups and cushions, watched him enter with a face they did not know. Bisher asked for clean water. He washed the paper gently, not rubbing away the ink. He dried it. He bought perfume, or took the best scent in the house, and placed fragrance upon it. Then he set the scrap high in a clean place, above the reach of dust. That night, the story says, Bisher's sleep was not like other sleep. A voice came to him in the secret place between hearing and dream. It said that as he had raised the divine name from the mud and made it fragrant among people, so his own name would be raised and made fragrant among those who remembered God. When morning came, Bisher was changed, not by disgust with the mud, but by kneeling in it, not by winning a battle against shame, but by letting shame show him what the heart still loved. He left the old life slowly, as dawn leaves darkness, and walked barefoot thereafter. The stones of Baghdad knew his feet. The poor knew his door. The people who once heard music from his house began to hear another kind of music from his silence. The traveler in the caravanserai looked down at his own hands. There are feelings that seem muddy because they have fallen in the road. Anger can be one. Shame can be one. Grief can be one. Yet sometimes, when lifted with care, the thing found in the mud carries a holy name. May whatever feels muddy in you be lifted gently toward the lamp. Outside, the wind pressed sand against the door, and fever came into the stories like a quiet visitor. Near midnight, the caravanserai settled into a deeper hush. The last of the kitchen fire reddened under ash. The camels no longer shifted. Even the dogs beyond the gate had stopped answering one another. The traveler rubbed his thumb across the rim of his cup, listening as the old dervish spoke of Rabia of Basra, whose little room was poorer than many storage sheds and richer than many palaces. Rabia was ill one winter evening. Rain had come through Basra in thin, cold lines, leaving the alleys slick and dark. In her room, a clay lamp burned beside a patched blanket. The flame was small, but it made a halo on the wall. A cup of water stood near her hand. Fever had brightened her eyes and hollowed her cheeks. Each breath seemed to climb a hill before leaving her. A few visitors came quietly. They were people of prayer, people who loved words like patience, surrender, and trust. They entered with wet hems and lowered voices. One sat near the wall. Another stood by the door, unwilling to bring too much of the street's dampness inside. They looked at Rabia's face and felt sorrow, but they were also troubled by the plainness of the room. No rich bedding, no physician fussing with jars, no servant running for broth. One visitor said that pain was a veil and that the strong heart should not feel it. Another said that a lover ought to be pleased with every decree of the beloved. The words were not false, but they came too quickly, like blankets thrown over a lamp. Rabia listened. The fever moved through her body. Rain tapped the roof. A thread of smoke rose from the lamp, curled, and vanished. At last, she turned her face toward them. Her voice was weak, yet it carried the clarity of water poured into a clean bowl. She said that if a person claimed not to feel pain, the body itself would answer otherwise. A thorn in the foot is a thorn. Fever is fever. Hunger is hunger. To deny the ache is not love. To make the ache a throne is not love either. Then she asked one of them to wet a cloth and place it near her head. She asked another to open the door a finger's width so the room could breathe. The visitors moved at once, humbled by the simplicity of the work. Cool cloth, fresh air, a cup held closer. No grand speech, only care. Rabia closed her eyes. After a while, she said that the heart may receive what comes from the friend without striking it, and still wash the wound, still drink water, still rest. The guest is not thrown into the street. The guest is also not allowed to burn down the house. The visitors sat with her until the rain thinned. No one tried again to polish pain into a shining phrase. They heard her breathing. They heard the lamp. One of them, who had arrived eager to speak of patience, left knowing how much tenderness patience requires. The old dervish in the caravanserai leaned back. His own shadow climbed the wall behind him. The traveler thought of the feeling he had carried from the well that morning. He had wanted to drive it out. Then he had wanted to obey it. Rabia's fevered lamp showed another way. Make a little room, bring a little water, open the door enough for air. May the ache beside you be treated as a guest, not a master. Near midnight's heart, the caravanserai grew still enough for even a king's dream to be weighed. The old dervish spoke more softly now, as if the walls themselves had grown sleepy. The traveler could see the lamp reflected in the dark surface of his cup. Anger, he had begun to understand, was not always loud because it was strong. Often it was loud because it was tired. The dervish nodded toward this thought without naming it, then opened a tale from Sa'di's garden. In a Persian city of pale domes and cypress shadows, there was a king whose commands traveled faster than mercy. Men bowed when he passed, not from love, but from careful fear. The tiles of his palace shone. Water moved through narrow channels in the garden. Nightingales sang in the rose bushes as though the world were gentle. Yet within the court, one word from the throne could darken many houses. The king was not without moments of softness. No human heart is made of one metal. Some evenings, after the drums of state were silent, he would walk alone under the painted ceilings and feel a strange unease. He had gold, horses, guards, cooks, scribes, carpets from distant looms. Still, sleep did not always come. The pillow received his head, but not his burden. One day a dervish came to the court. His robe was plain and travel-worn. Dust gathered at the hem. He carried no gift except a face unafraid of marble. The courtiers watched him with suspicion. A man without hunger for favor is difficult to place. The king, perhaps moved by a rare humility, asked the dervish for counsel. He wanted to know what act of worship would be best for a ruler like him. Should he give more alms? Should he build a mosque? Should he feed the poor at the gate? Should he fast until his face grew thin enough to impress heaven? The dervish looked at the king. The garden fountain made a silver sound. A peacock called from somewhere beyond the wall. The courtiers held their breath, for counsel given near power can become a dangerous blade. The dervish said the best worship for that king would be sleep at midday. A murmur moved through the court. Some thought it an insult. Some thought it madness. The king's face tightened, but the dervish did not tremble. He explained that while the king slept, no command would leave his mouth. No tax would be increased. No prisoner would be struck. No servant would be humiliated for a crooked fold in a robe. During that hour of sleep, the people would have rest from him, and such rest would rise like prayer. The king lowered his eyes. No one knew whether shame or anger reached him first. Both stood at the door. Yet for once, he did not call the guards. He listened to the fountain. He listened to the small truth that had entered the palace without permission. The dervish had not asked him to become an angel before sunset. He had asked him to stop causing harm for 1 hour. That day, the king ordered no punishment. Later, some said he slept after the noon meal and woke quieter. Others said the dervish's words returned whenever his temper rose. The court scribes did not write all of it down. Scribes prefer victories with banners. A king restraining his tongue leaves little for the record, but much for the world. In the caravanserai, the old dervish let his own eyes half close. The traveler thought of the morning well, of the sentence he wished he had thrown back, sharper than the first. Perhaps there are times when the most holy act is not to answer. Perhaps the hard feeling may be given a mat in the corner and told to rest. May the heat in you lie down before it orders any harm. The hour after midnight opened like a road, and fear began to saddle its horse. A little after midnight, the desert became vast around the caravanserai. The walls seemed thin against so much sky. Stars gathered above the roof like seeds scattered from a dark hand. The traveler felt a different feeling now beneath the anger, older and colder. Fear often wears the mask of fury when it does not want to be recognized. The old dervish lifted his gaze toward the stars and began a tale Rumi loved to tell. In the court of Solomon, the morning wind waited like a servant at the edge of command. Birds settled on the parapets. Light touched the polished stones. Men came from many lands seeking judgment, healing, answers, or relief from the weight of their own imagining. Solomon listened with the patience of someone who had heard both kings and ants speak. One morning, a man rushed into the court pale as linen. His turban was crooked, dust clung to his beard. His eyes moved as though something unseen stood behind every pillar. He bowed before Solomon and begged for help. In the market, he had seen the angel of death looking at him with a strange gaze. The look had pierced him. His limbs had filled with ice. He could not remain in that city another hour. He asked Solomon to command the wind to carry him far away, across plains and mountains, all the way to Hindustan. There, he thought, distance would loosen the grip of fear. There, among unfamiliar trees and rivers, the gaze from the market would not find him. Solomon studied the man's face. The court grew quiet. Fear had already taken the man by the hand. It only needed wings. Perhaps Solomon knew that argument would not reach him. Perhaps mercy sometimes lets a frightened creature run until running has finished its teaching. He commanded the wind. The wind rose. It wrapped the man in its invisible arms and lifted him from the court. The city fell away beneath him. Domes, roofs, alleys, smoke from ovens, bright threads of water. Then came desert, mountain, valley, field. By evening, the man stood in Hindustan under a sky strange to him, breathing hard, believing for one moment that fear had been outrun. The next day, Solomon saw the angel of death. He asked about the look given to the man in the market. The angel answered that it had not been a look of threat, but of wonder. A command had been received to meet that man in Hindustan that very night. Yet there he had stood in Solomon's city that morning. The angel had been astonished to see him so far from the appointed place. Solomon listened. The wind moved softly around the court, touching the edge of his robe. The story does not dwell on the man's last breath. It rests instead on the mystery of fleeing. The very fear that promised escape had carried him toward the place he dreaded. In the caravanserai, the traveler drew his cloak closer. The old dervish did not speak of death as a terror. He spoke of fear as a horse easily startled, a horse that can bolt through the night and drag the rider over stones. Not every fear is false. Not every danger is imagined. Yet the frightened heart, if handed the reins, may gallop farther than wisdom ever asked. The feeling in the traveler's chest shifted. The anger from the well had hidden a fear of being small, unseen, dismissed like dust from a sleeve. He had wanted to run into a reply, a punishment, a victory. But the tale of Solomon left another possibility. Sit still long enough to see the face of the visitor. Let fear sit beside you tonight without being given the reins. At the edge of that silence, friendship knocked softly, and a few small stones waited in Shibli's sleeve. The night had passed its deepest gate. Somewhere in the caravanserai, a sleeping merchant turned over and murmured in a dream. A horse stamped once in the stable, then settled. The traveler watched a moth circle the lamp without touching the flame. The old dervish followed its slow turning. then spoke of Shibli of Baghdad, whose love made ordinary people unsure whether to call him mad or awake. Shibli lived with a heart too bare for polite rooms. Sometimes he laughed in the market with tears on his cheeks. Sometimes he walked beside the Tigris whispering to the water. Sometimes he spoke a sentence that opened like a door, and those who heard it carried the sound for years. The people of Baghdad admired him, feared him, visited him, avoided him, and told stories about him in every tea shop. There came a time when Shibli was taken to a place for the disturbed. Perhaps the city wanted quiet. Perhaps the people did not know what else to do with a man who had been burned by meanings they could not see. The place had a courtyard, a few trees, and walls the color of old bread. At evening, the sky above it turned indigo. Lamps were lit one by one. Men wandered there muttering, sleeping, singing, staring into corners as if messages were written in dust. News spread that Shibli was inside. Some of his companions came to visit. They had praised him in gatherings. They had repeated his sayings. They had called themselves his friends. Now they arrived at the gate with concerned faces and clean robes. The keeper let them in. Shibli saw them crossing the courtyard. He asked why they had come. They answered that they were his friends. At once, Shibli bent down, gathered small stones and clods of dry earth, and tossed them toward the visitors. Not great stones, not weapons to break bone, enough to sting the robe, startle the hand, disturb the dignity. One struck a sleeve, one bounced near a sandal, one touched the wall and fell. The visitors cried out and scattered. Some shielded their faces. Some stepped behind a tree. One hurried all the way back toward the gate. Their concern had been brave while the air was empty. It became less brave when dust flew. Shibli watched them retreat. The old stories say he called after them that friends do not flee from a few little stones. If such small blows drove them away, what would become of friendship under the stones of sorrow, blame, poverty, disgrace, or truth? Then he sat down in the courtyard, dust on his hands, and became quiet. The tale is strange, and the old dervish did not smooth it too much. Shibli's gesture was not a rule for conduct. It was a mirror held at an uncomfortable angle. Many people love a peaceful saint. Fewer remain near a wounded one. Many praise patience in song. Fewer sit beside a friend whose grief has rough edges. The traveler thought of the harsh word at the well. He thought of how quickly hurt becomes a stone in the hand. He also thought of the people from whom he expected perfect gentleness while offering very little room for their bruises. A hard feeling, once welcomed, may reveal not only pain but loneliness underneath it. The moth moved away from the lamp at last and rested on the wall. The old dervish poured the last of the warm water into the traveler's cup. May the bruise in you ask for honesty without sharpening into cruelty. The lamp burned lower, and somewhere beyond Baghdad a lover unfolded papers by the gate. After Shibli's courtyard, the old dervish let the quiet remain for a while. The traveler heard his own breathing. The anger that had arrived with him at sunset had changed shape many times. Bitter speech, needle, foolishness, mud, fever, power, fear, friendship. Now it became memory. The mind, when wounded, likes to write long letters in the dark. The dervish turned his cup in both hands and began a tale from Rumi about a lover who kept too careful a record of absence. There was once a lover who had been separated from the beloved for a long season. The days of absence passed through him like dry wind through reeds. In the morning he counted the streets where the beloved was not. At noon he spoke to shadows. At night he lay awake and recited his grief until the walls knew every syllable. He began to write it down. On one sheet he wrote of the meals he could not taste. On another, the sleep that would not stay. On another, the friends who grew tired of hearing the same name. He wrote of the dust on the road, the changing moon, the bitterness of festivals, the ache in his bones when a song came from a distant house. He folded the papers, unfolded them, corrected them, added more. His sorrow became an archive with ribbons. One evening, word came that the beloved had returned. The lover trembled. He gathered his papers. He washed his face, though tears soon made it wet again. He put on a robe that had once pleased the beloved and went to the garden gate. The hour was blue. Pomegranates hung dark among their leaves. A lamp burned in a niche. Beyond the wall, water moved in a narrow channel, carrying rose petals from some courtyard upstream. The beloved entered quietly. No drum announced the arrival. No servant cried out. The beloved simply stood before him in the living dusk, near enough for the lover to see the tired kindness in the eyes, the dust of travel on the hem, the hand resting lightly against the gate. The lover began to read. He opened the first paper and spoke of the first month of absence. His voice shook. The beloved listened. He opened the second and spoke of nights without sleep. The beloved remained. He opened the third and spoke of how the heart had burned, how the body had thinned, how every passerby had seemed almost the one he awaited and therefore another disappointment. The beloved's face grew sorrowful, but not for the absence, for the lover was still absent while standing close. At last the beloved touched the papers and asked why the ink was being embraced while the living presence stood before him. The long record of separation had become a curtain. The beloved had come, yet the lover continued speaking to the wound as if it were the only guest. The papers slipped from his hand. A small wind moved through the garden and turned one sheet over. The ink caught the lamplight. The lover looked up. He saw not an idea, not a memory, not the shape made by longing, but the one who had arrived. His grief did not become false. The months had been real. The sleepless nights had been real. Yet in that moment the grief was no longer the master of the room. The old dervish in the caravanserai looked toward the open gate, where the desert lay quiet under stars. The traveler thought of the sentence at the well, how many times he had repeated it inwardly, each time adding heat, each time polishing the wound until it shone brighter than the present night. The tale did not ask him to deny the hurt. It asked him to notice when the account book had become dearer than freedom. May the story in you grow quiet enough to notice what has arrived. A basin of warm water was brought then, and the old dervish remembered a bathhouse in Nishapur. The boy from the kitchen came once more through the courtyard, this time carrying a shallow basin. Steam rose from it in pale threads. The old dervish dipped his fingers into the water and smiled faintly, as if memory had touched him before the warmth did. He told the traveler of Abu Saidi, the gentle master of Nishapur, and of a lesson learned not in a school, but in a bathhouse. In Nishapur, winter could enter the bones. Snow rested on distant roofs, and the streets at dawn were quiet except for bakers, water carriers, and the first hooves of caravan animals. At such an hour, Abu Saidi went to the public bath. The building was low and domed. Lamps burned behind mist. Warm water ran in channels along the stone floor. Men spoke softly because steam makes even ordinary words seem private. A bath attendant received him. The man's sleeves were rolled. His hands were strong from work. He poured water over Abu Saidi's shoulders, rubbed his skin with a cloth, and scraped away the gray rolls of loosened dirt that gather on any traveler. The master sat without pride. In the bath, silk and wool are both removed. The body, which men dress in reputation, becomes simple again. Abu Saidi asked the attendant a question. He asked what generosity was. The attendant did not answer at once. He continued his work. Water fell into the basin with a hollow sound. Steam blurred the lamps. From another chamber came a cough, then the scrape of a wooden sandal on wet stone. The attendant lifted a bit of dirt from Abu Saidi's arm. He did not hold it up. He did not laugh. He did not show it to the other men in the bath. He quietly dropped it away where it could not shame the one from whom it had come. Then he said that generosity is hiding another person's dirt. Abu Sa'id became still. A scholar might have answered with many words. A preacher might have spoken of coins, bread, robes, and hospitality. The bath attendant, who handled the plain evidence of human dust every day, knew something more delicate. To give bread is mercy. To cover shame is also mercy. To see what could humiliate another and refuse to make a lamp of it is a secret form of nobility. The master later told the story, and the attendant's answer traveled farther than the steam of that bathhouse. It entered gatherings and books. It entered the memory of those who had felt exposed by their own stains. In the caravanserai, the traveler lowered his eyes. The harsh word at the well had angered him, but part of its sting came from being seen in an unkind light. He had also, he knew, uncovered the faults of others in his mind and held them up before an invisible crowd. Anger is often a bath attendant with cruel hands. It scrapes, then displays. Mercy scrapes, then covers. The old dervish took a corner of his sleeve and wiped a drop of water from the rim of the basin. He did it slowly, with no one to impress. The traveler felt the room grow warmer, not from the coals, but from the thought that every person carries dust from the road. Some dust needs washing. Some needs hiding until washing is possible. May the tender place in you be covered with the cloth of mercy. The steam faded from the tale, and a night road appeared where a robber heard a verse through a wall. The night was moving toward its last quarter. The stars had sharpened. The traveler's anger had become weary, like a horse after a long road. Beneath it lay remorse, not only for what had been done to him, but for the replies he had imagined, the punishments he had rehearsed, the pleasure he had taken in being right. The old dervish recognized that shadow. He turned the wick lower and spoke of Feudale ibn Iyad. Before Feudale became a saint whose name people spoke with tenderness, he was feared on the road. Caravans lowered their voices when his hills came into view. Merchants hid coins in hems and saddle linings. Mothers warned sons not to travel after dusk. Feudale knew the desert paths, the narrow passes, the places where a rider could be stopped before help could hear. He was not born without a heart. No one is. But a heart can become covered, layer by layer, until it mistakes hardness for safety. Feudale carried such hardness. It fed him. It obeyed him. It kept others at a distance. One night, he climbed a wall. Some say he climbed for love of a woman whose house stood beyond it. Some say he climbed with the intention of theft. The old tellers leave both shadows near the story, for desire and taking our cousins when the heart is restless. The moon was thin. The stones were cold beneath his fingers. His cloak brushed the wall. Below, the street lay silent except for the far call of a night watchman. As Feudale paused at the top, he heard a voice from a nearby house. Someone inside was reciting from the Quran. The words came through the night not as a command shouted from a pulpit, but as a question laid upon the heart. Had the time not come for hearts to soften before the remembrance of God? Feudale froze. His hand remained on the wall. The world seemed to draw one breath and hold it. The house, the street, the moon, the rough stones under his palm, all became witnesses. He did not argue. He did not say that tomorrow would be better. He did not climb down on the other side. The question had found the one place in him not yet armored. He whispered that the time had come. Then he descended. The descent was not only from a wall. It was from a life. Feudale left the road of robbery. He sought forgiveness from those he had harmed. He returned what could be returned. What could not be returned became tears, prayer, service, long nights. The same strength that had once frightened travelers became strength for guarding the heart. People later came to him for counsel. unaware perhaps that counsel ripens slowly in the soil of remorse. In the caravanserai, the traveler listened with his face in shadow. Remorse is a difficult visitor. It comes carrying every foolish word, every hard glance, every inward violence. Many try to drive it out with excuses. Others let it whip them until dawn. Feudale's wall offered another way. The feeling was not denied. It was heard. Then it became a step downward from harm. The old dervish placed his hand flat on the floor, as if feeling the earth beneath all travelers, saints, robbers, merchants, kings, and wounded men at wells. The reed flute outside was silent now, but its absence had a sound. May remorse in you become a lamp, not a lash. Before dawn, the dervish turned to Sadi's garden, where one angry sentence was carried through a kinder mouth. Before dawn, the caravanserai became almost blue. The lamp had grown small, and the sky beyond the gate had loosened from black to indigo. A rooster had not yet called. The traveler sat wrapped in his cloak, no longer trying to decide whether the hard feeling had gone. It had not gone. It had become quieter, and that was enough for the last hour of night. The old dervish began the final tale, one Sadi placed among kings, prisoners, and the perilous work of the tongue. There was once a ruler seated in judgment. The court was bright with carpets and metalwork, but the air was tense. A prisoner stood before the throne with his hands bound. His robe was torn from travel and trouble. His face carried the exhaustion of one who had reached the edge of hope. The king had already decided on punishment. Perhaps the prisoner had rebelled. Perhaps he had stolen. Perhaps he had simply fallen under the wheel of power, as small men often do in the stories of courts. The scribes waited with reed pens. Guards stood at either side. Viziers watched the king's face for signs of weather. When the prisoner understood that his life was closing, anger rose in him like a last flame. He spoke bitterly in his own tongue. His words were curses, sharp and desperate. A man with nothing left may spend his last breath throwing stones at the sky. The king did not understand the language. He turned to a wise vizier and asked what had been said. The vizier knew the prisoner's meaning. He heard the curses clearly. He also saw the king's temper waiting like dry grass near a spark. In that thin moment, he chose not to carry the flame. He bowed and said that the prisoner had spoken of those who restrain anger and forgive people, and of the mercy loved by the most merciful. The court changed. The words, though not the prisoner's own, entered the king as if a window had opened. The ruler looked at the bound man and saw not merely an offender, but a creature shaking at the edge of death. His anger softened. His pride loosened. He ordered that the prisoner be spared. Another vizier, who disliked the first or loved correctness more than peace, stepped forward. He told the king that the translation had not been faithful. The prisoner had cursed the throne. He had spoken with bitterness, not piety. The court waited again. The king looked at the second vizier. Then he looked at the first. At last he said that the first man's falsehood was better than the second man's truth, because the first had bent toward mercy while the second had tried to stir anger back to life. The prisoner's bonds were loosened. The guard stepped aside. Perhaps he left stunned, with curses still drying on his tongue and mercy already walking beside him. Perhaps the first vizier slept well that night. Perhaps the second lay awake, measuring the difference between accuracy and healing. Sadi leaves the court with that question glowing like a coal covered in ash. In the caravanserai, the old dervish stopped speaking. The traveler understood why this tale had been saved for dawn. A hard feeling often arrives in a language of curses. It speaks from fear, humiliation, grief, and old hunger. Not every word it says must be obeyed. Not every sentence must be repeated to the king within. Something wiser may translate it. The lamp gave a final golden shiver. Beyond the gate, the horizon had begun to pale. The traveler placed a hand over his chest, not to force the feeling away, but to keep it company as it changed languages. Let the hard feeling in you be translated before dawn into mercy. The reed flute breathed once in the blue of morning, and the caravanserai let the night go. Thank you for spending this hour with the reed flute. If this brought you a moment of peace, consider subscribing. Rest well and sleep deeply.